All right, so welcome again to our weekly mindfulness. I want to start as always by acknowledging that I'm broadcasting from the traditional lands of the Dja Dja Wurrung people and to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people watching today, and also to the First Nations people of wherever people are watching from, to pay respects to them for the care that they've given to the earth for so many thousands of years. So today, as we have done in last couple of weeks, I've got a reading. I've got a couple of readings today actually, and we'll do some mindfulness, some sitting together. We'll talk through a few different aspects of the practice, and we'll have the chance to answer questions and discuss things at the end. And if people are watching on Catch Up, just remember that you can post questions in the comments as well. And we do this every Wednesday, Melbourne time, shifting times next week, but I'll talk about that at the end if I remember. So to start with, we usually just sit and close our eyes and just bring our attention back to our senses and to now. Because whatever we've been doing today, we've all probably been distracted by thoughts. So we can just start by finding the breath, feeling what it's like to breathe in, feeling what it's like to breathe out. And just moving attention from the thought stream to the breath. Just allow the breath to be exactly as it is. It doesn't need to be a certain way. And just relax into this process of bringing attention into the present moment, into this. We could say into reality. Spend a lot of time lost in imagination, thinking about things that don't exist, like the past and the future. And right now, we're just coming back to reality, which is always on this knife edge that we call now. And as we sit together and feel the breath, I invite you to just pick up the past and just imagine, close your eyes, imagine that you're holding the past in your hand. All thoughts of the past, and we're just putting that into a sack. Good old Hessian sack. And then we're taking all thoughts of future, putting those into the sack as well. And then we take all thoughts that relate to identity, all thoughts of I am like this, I am like that, I am too, I'm not enough. And we're just putting those into the sack as well. So past, future, identity, all gone just for the minute. And I just want you to imagine that you're just tying up that sack And just gently, because we don't want to hurt them, but just gently placing that outside your front door. Just the way you might let your dog out if they're scratching and barking and disturbing you. You just put them out in the backyard. You know they'll be safe. But you want some peace and quiet. So we're just putting the past, the future, and that identity outside for a moment. Knowing that everything that's in that sack, we can go and get later if we need it. But that we don't need it right now. We don't need it for this process or for this session. And the attention that we were devoting to past and future and identity, that we bring that across to the breath, to feeling the breath in the body. And if those thoughts still arise that you've placed in that sack, that's okay. And if you get lost in them, that's okay. But just keep on coming back to reality, back to what is here, now, this very instant. Knowing that we can always worry later, we can always feel guilty later, always feel regretful and angry and sad and ripped off anytime that we want. We don't need to right now. You can just breathe and listen. And we can notice the space inside us that the breath is coming into and going out of. So if you close your eyes and take attention to the body, you might feel a sense of spaciousness, openness, that there's this space in there that things are rising. There might be some emotion, some physical sensation that you can feel in that space. Might be thought arising out of that space. You can feel the breath going into that space. So you can be aware of the breath, aware of the body, and aware of this spaciousness inside. And we can just let our attention rest in the spaciousness. The attention's tired, it's been running around, it's been overstimulated. And just like a small child who's had too much sugar, too much excitement. We're just letting it rest, pulling the curtains, pulling up the covers. Letting attention just rest and just be here in this moment, here in this space. And in essence, this is our practice, is that we're withdrawing attention from thinking, which we're all addicted to thinking. So we start with abstinence in a sense, but we can't stop thinking the way we can stop another addiction. We're just withdrawing attention from it, making it less of a focus. We take the attention that we've withdrawn and we invest it in reality, in breath awareness, in body awareness. And then we notice the space within us out of which everything arises and into which everything disappears. And we can take us just one little step further and we can sense ourselves as the awareness that's watching all of this. And you might like to ask the question, who is watching the breath? Who is aware of thoughts? And don't answer the question. Just sit with it and observe in your own experience who or what is observing, who or what is watching. And of course, what's watching this observer, we can't describe or quantify or even see, because it is what's looking. It can't see itself. You can't see your own eyeballs. Camera can't take a picture of itself. The headlights can't illuminate themselves. They can only go outwards. So this is what we do, is we sense that awareness. We notice the fact that I am aware, the fact that I am watching what happens. And in that we can start to notice the background awareness. And why is this important? Why do I emphasize this so much? Because In my early practice, all I emphasized was trying to notice the breath, trying to stay in the present, trying to stay aware. But what draws us back into suffering and back into the addiction to thinking over and over and over is that we identify with thoughts that come. When the thought I comes, I am like this, or I've been wronged. It's our identification with that thought. It's our belief in that thought. That what's the I in that thought is me. That's what I am. That's what we believe in that moment. And that's the source of our suffering, is that belief. It's not the things that happen. It's that belief. So when I notice, when I notice that I am not the thought, I am not the story self, the self-image. I am the one who witnesses the self-image. I'm the one who sees the thought arising. That's the start of our freedom. Because if I am the awareness that's watching it all, that awareness isn't concerned with what happens. That awareness is not seeking a particular outcome. It doesn't need anything to be fulfilled. The awareness doesn't need a new car or a new house or a better job or a better relationship. It is self-sufficient. And the more you know, not believe, I wouldn't recommend believing anything, particularly anything that I say. But when we know through our direct experience that that's what we are, then all the suffering starts to lose its sting. And the events start to lose their importance. And then, yes, we take care of the world and events as best we can, which would, we do that regardless. Everyone does that, does their best regardless. But we can start to do that without the same sense of ownership and the same sense of, and without the same suffering that comes from believing that we are this story self. So in a sense, the point of noticing the breath is to help us feel our way into this place where we're doing what they call just being, which is just sitting and looking from that awareness without getting caught up in every thought that comes and goes. So the reason I emphasize the awareness so much is because until you until you kind of unhook identity from thought, then the other practices will only take you so far. Because as soon as something happens in your life, then you'll be thrown out of balance, or you'll be suffering again. So in a sense, this is it's a shortcut. That by noticing, finding the awareness and looking from that, we can start to break the hold that thinking has over us much quicker than if we're just following the breath and feeling the body. They'll do it too. But if what we are is the awareness, or if that's our gateway, then why not discover that straight away? Why not step straight into that? And if any of this is confusing or it doesn't quite make sense, that's okay. Don't try to figure it out. Just sit with that confusion and close your eyes, feel the breath, and look into your own experience and find the answers there. Who is it that watches? Who is it that listens to the voice that chatters on inside us all? Who is it that notices the breath? So let's just close our eyes and sit with that question for a moment. We can feel the breath and just ask, who is watching the breath? And look for the answer. Don't answer with words, but look for it in your own experience. Who is watching the breath? And once you sense what is watching, see if you can just notice that awareness without needing to even label it. You don't even need to call it awareness. See if you can notice yourself, the you that's watching. And in a sense, then our practice becomes this inner exploration. We sit we sit with those questions of who is watching. We become aware of ourselves as the watchers. And we sit and we explore that with attention. We become scientists exploring the inner world, not to label and categorize, but just to know it experientially. It's like we're wandering in the forest with no goal or no aim, but just to know that place. So a couple of readings that I wanted to share today. I invite you to keep feeling the breath. Keep noticing yourself as the watcher. I think this is a passage from the Tao Te Ching again, which we've looked at last couple of weeks. Stephen Mitchell's version, illustrated version. This is chapter 15. The ancient masters were profound and subtle. Their wisdom was unfathomable. There is no way to describe it. All we can describe is their appearance. They were careful as someone crossing an iced over stream, alert as a warrior in enemy territory, courteous as a guest, fluid as melting ice, shapeable as a block of wood, receptive as a valley, clear as a glass of water. Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? The master doesn't seek fulfilment. Not seeking, not expecting, she is present and can welcome all things. So if we come back to our practice, sitting and just exploring, then what we could say is, we can link to the master doesn't seek fulfillment. We're not seeking fulfillment from some thought or some experience that comes as we sit and we watch. Not seeking, not expecting, she is present and can welcome all things. So without trying to grasp something or get something, we can be present and welcome all things. So whatever arises in that space is okay. Past thoughts, future thoughts, all of that is okay. But if we step back into the passage, we're also saying that the master was careful as someone crossing an iced over stream. So the master here is careful not to slip up, not to get drawn into those thoughts, alert as a warrior in enemy territory. So she's present and can welcome all things without being fooled by them, without getting lost in them. So can we do that in some small way? Can we sit and watch and welcome the thoughts that come, the feelings that come, but staying aware of who we are in that picture, staying aware of you as the watcher of that, as the observer of that, not as the thought, and not as the I that's referred to in the thought. And if it's a little confusing, then we can come back to that the ancient masters were profound and subtle. Their wisdom was unfathomable, and that there's no way to describe it. So we can't use words really to convey what they embodied. We can only look in our own experience. And so with this practice, we can use body awareness and breath awareness on their own, and they'll provide some relief. But if you want to know the truth of who you are, then there's a need to move deeper than that. Maybe not a need, but we can fast track our progress somewhat, use some terminology that's a little problematic. We can take a shortcut straight to the awareness itself, and we can stay there. So I'm going to leave my confusing talk there, if it is confusing. And I wanted to just share another little passage, and this is from the Open Secret by Wei Wu Wei. Which I strongly recommend. And this is about timelessness, which I've talked about a little bit. So he's got a way with words. He'll say, the past is gone, but the present has become the past before we can know it, before the complicated phenomenal processes of sense perception, transmission, and conception have been completed. Therefore, the present has gone too. So just pausing, by the time we process and conceptualize what we call the present, it's already done. And the future, we cannot know it until it has become the past, for it can never be known as in the present. Then how can it be at all? For we cannot know the past, which is gone. Surely we cannot. Neither future, present, nor past can we ever know. So then as soon as we know something, it's past. It's already done. I'm going to read the next paragraph. I probably shouldn't, but I really like it. It's a little bit confusing maybe. How then do they exist, if existence they have? And if any of them exist, which exists? Or do all of them exist as a unity unextended in time and space, a time and space which only come into apparent existence with them, hypothetically, in order to recognize them, to render them cognizable. Clearly, none of them exists as a thing in themselves, in itself, as objective events in their own right, a phenomena separate from the cognizers of them. Future, present, past appear to be three illusory aspects of a single subjective phenomenon known as cognition. All right. So, thoroughly confuse everyone there. So, always, if we maybe simplify that a little, maybe just a little, what's being said is that obviously we know that past doesn't exist. We know that memory exists now. But we know that memory is not the past, it's just a thought in our heads. We know that future doesn't exist because future is an imagination, it's a projection. And it can, we're not saying that these aren't helpful projections or there's a problem with them in themselves. We're just trying to recognize the reality of them. So past doesn't actually exist, future doesn't actually exist. So then what we call the present, by the time we're able to experience it and label it and, oh, my lighting's gone weird. That's not my natural glow. So, by the time we experience it as it is, oh, there we go. By the time we've perceived it and remembered it and analyzed it, it's gone. It's past. And so what we call past, present, and future, we actually exist in this space that is timeless. And we use the idea of past, present, and future to help us to negotiate it and navigate it. And that's fine. We're using it like a map that you use. That's a representation of a streetscape or a landscape. And we use a map that's a representation to be able to find our way around. And that's great. It's a great tool. But we don't get confused and we don't try and hop into the map and start. Or we don't, try and go to the restaurant that's on the map and try to get some food from it. We know it as a representation. So when we talk about the present moment, we talk about, past, present, future. Where we want to get to in our practice, so to speak, is to just drop all of these concepts and just throw away the idea of even a present moment, throw away the idea of past, future, and just drop into this space inside that we've been looking at and pointing to today. And ask that question, who is watching? And find that space and find that watcher. And just sit in that and let attention explore it. The more we get caught up in these concepts of past and future and living in the present and all of this that I know I talk about, but the more we get caught up in this, the more food it is for thought. And the more we can analyze our progress and, am I living in the present? Am I living in the present more than I did last week? I hope I'm living in the present more next week. All this kind of banter that goes on inside the head, that's just food for the storyteller. So instead, let's just cut the concepts. Let's just cut it at the root and just sit and be in this inner space. We don't have to call it anything. And notice the awareness, feel the breath, and allow that process to unfold on its own. There's nowhere we can get with this process, there's nowhere to go. There's no improvement that's going to happen. Or for you as the awareness. Just if we can throw away all of that, or just put it in a sack and leave it outside while we're sitting, and really just wander in this inner world. Notice the awareness, notice the space, feel the breath, and just enjoy that process. Enjoy that connection to yourself, that connection to reality, without trying to get something from it. So I want to open the floor up to questions because, as I say, might have thoroughly confused everyone, and open to clarifying questions in comments, people watching later as well. But I just wanted to take a moment to offer that space to share any questions or observations that you have. And just to reiterate that there's no need to understand this. You know, the mind can't understand this. So if the mind's confused, that's okay. And we're not looking for something to believe, we're looking for some inspiration to look inside more deeply, to look into your inner experience. So you can throw away everything that I've said, except maybe the question, who is noticing? Who is experiencing all this? Is that a question there? I think your sound might have gone, or you're a bit frozen on my end. I don't know about your end, but or I might be frozen. Who would know?
Oh.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, lost you.
Yeah.
Be the wonders of the National Broadband Network, I think.
Clear explanation.
Yeah, your audio's cactus, so I might just. Oh, maybe you're back.
No.
No, I think your connection might be a bit sketchy. I'm just going to pause the, finish the recording there, and then we can keep chatting anyway. And if people do have questions, pop them in the comments. And so next week will be on Wednesday as well, shifting to 9 a.m. just because of life commitments for me. So Wednesday 9 a.m. Melbourne time, I'll be on here live, and I'll send it on catch up. So Facebook groups Mindfulness with Ollie Doyle, if people want to join that. If you want to join my mailing list, you can just email Ollie, O-L-I, at peacethroughmindfulness.com.au. And if you, people who are on Facebook, that group's a good way to connect, and happy to chat with people on Messenger or through email or whatever. And yeah, see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.